If you're ever driving through the mountains late at night and you see a motel sign glowing through the fog, there's one thing you should probably remember. Just because a place has a vacancy doesn't mean you're supposed to stay there. Because one couple learned that lesson after checking into a mountain lodge that, according to the internet, hadn't existed for years. And the strangest part, they still have the room key. My name is Daniel. At the time this happened, my wife Emily and I had been married for less than a year. We were both exhausted from work, so for our anniversary, we decided to take a long weekend somewhere quiet. No phones, no emails, no relatives, just 3 days in the mountains. We found a small town in Western Virginia that neither of us had ever visited. It looked perfect, a few hundred residents, a couple of restaurants, miles of forest. And according to a travel website, an old roadside lodge called Pine Hollow. The reviews were surprisingly good. People described it as peaceful, private, perfect for couples. One review even said, "You'll sleep better here than anywhere else." At the time, I thought that sounded nice. Looking back, that sentence bothers me more than anything else. We left Friday afternoon. By sunset, we were already deep in the mountains. The GPS kept losing signal. Eventually, it stopped showing our location altogether. Emily was driving while I held the phone. Every few minutes, she'd ask, "Are you sure this is the right road?" I'd tell her yes, even though I wasn't sure anymore. The road became narrower, then darker, no streetlights, no houses, no businesses, just trees. Eventually, we rounded a bend and saw a wooden sign illuminated by 2 old yellow bulbs. Pine Hollow Lodge. An arrow pointed down a gravel road. Emily slowed. "That's it?" I checked the address. It matched. We turned onto the gravel. The road went through the trees for almost half a mile before the lodge appeared. It was a large 2-story wooden building, old but surprisingly well maintained. There were only 3 other vehicles in the parking lot. A single porch light flickered above the entrance. Emily looked at me, kind of creepy. I smiled. That's what we came for. Neither of us realized how accurate that was. Inside, the lobby was warm. There was an old stone fireplace burning in the corner. A wooden desk sat beneath a brass chandelier. Behind it was an elderly woman wearing a gray cardigan. She looked up as we entered, then smiled. "Daniel and Emily?" We both stopped. I hadn't told her our names. I assumed she'd seen the reservation. "Yes." She reached beneath the desk. "I've been expecting you." She placed a brass key on the counter. A small wooden tag hung from it. 12. Room 12, she said. I picked up the key. It was surprisingly heavy. 2nd floor. Then she paused. Her smile disappeared. "One thing." Emily looked at her. "What?" The woman glanced toward the staircase. "If someone knocks on your door after midnight, don't answer." I laughed. I honestly thought she was joking. "Is that a local ghost story?" She didn't laugh. No. Her eyes stayed on mine. "It's a safety rule." That was the first moment I felt uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to leave. Room 12 was at the end of the 2nd floor hallway. The room itself was actually beautiful. Old wooden walls, a stone fireplace, 2 large windows overlooking the forest, a king-size bed, and a little sitting area beside the window. Emily loved it. Within 20 minutes, she'd unpacked half the suitcase. I ordered dinner from a restaurant in town. We ate beside the fireplace. Then we opened a bottle of wine we'd brought from home. By 11, we were both tired. We turned off the lights, locked the door, and went to sleep. I woke up sometime after midnight. I didn't know what had disturbed me. The room was completely dark. Emily was asleep beside me. Then I heard it. 3 knocks, slow, heavy, from the hallway. Knock, 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 knock. I stared at the bedroom door. Emily woke up. What was that? I don't know. We listened. Nothing. I checked my phone. 12:17 a.m. Then 3 more knocks, this time louder. Knock, knock. Emily whispered, "Don't answer." I remembered the receptionist. For some reason, that made the room feel much colder. I got out of bed, walked toward the door, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The lights were on. There was nobody there. I stayed there for several seconds. Then I noticed something. At the very end of the hallway, near the staircase, a door was slowly swinging shut. I hadn't heard anyone walk away. I hadn't heard the door open, but someone, or something, had just been standing there. I backed away from the door. Emily sat up. Who was it? No one. Daniel. I didn't see anyone. We stayed awake for another hour. Nothing happened. Eventually, exhaustion won. I fell asleep. Then I woke again. This time, because someone was tapping on the window. 3 gentle taps. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. Emily was already awake. She was staring at the curtains. Neither of us moved. The tapping came again. 3 times. Emily whispered, "Daniel, we're on the 2nd floor." I knew. There was no balcony, no fire escape, nothing outside that window except a steep drop into the forest. I slowly reached for the curtain and pulled it aside. At first, I saw nothing, just trees, fog, darkness. Then lightning flashed somewhere behind the clouds. For less than a second, I saw a figure standing among the trees, about 20 feet from the window, a man, completely motionless, looking directly at us. The darkness returned. I pulled the curtain shut. Emily grabbed my arm. "Did you see him?" I didn't answer, because I was trying to convince myself that I hadn't. 5 minutes later, we heard footsteps in the hallway, slow footsteps. Someone walking toward our room, 1 step, then another, then another. The footsteps stopped directly outside our door. We both held our breath. The doorknob moved, slowly. It turned downward, until the lock caught. Then it stopped. A few seconds passed. The handle moved again, this time harder. Emily reached for her phone. No signal. I checked mine. Nothing. Then someone whispered through the door, so quietly I could barely hear it. "You're in the wrong room." And then the footsteps walked away. I waited until I could no longer hear them. Then I whispered, "Pack your bags." Emily nodded. We weren't staying another night, but when I opened the door, the hallway was empty, and on the floor, directly outside our room, was something that hadn't been there before. A second brass key, with a wooden tag, 12, except this key was covered in fresh mud, and beneath it, someone had scratched 4 words into the wooden floor. I stared at the words carved into the floor. "You shouldn't have come." For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then Emily whispered, "Daniel, let's go." I agreed. I grabbed our bags. She grabbed her phone. We opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Nothing, no footsteps, no voices, just the soft buzzing of the old lights above us. We hurried toward the staircase, and that's when I noticed something. Room 11. The door was slightly open. I stopped. Emily kept walking. "Daniel?" I looked inside. The room was completely dark, but I could hear something. A faint scratching sound, like fingernails moving slowly across wood. I pulled the door shut. "Don't look." We went downstairs. The lobby was empty. The fireplace was still burning. The receptionist was gone. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. I walked behind the desk. There was an old brass bell sitting beside the register. I hit it. Ding. The sound echoed through the building. The lobby was empty. The fireplace was still burning. The receptionist was gone. I called out, "Hello?" Nothing. I walked behind the desk. There was an old brass bell sitting beside the register. I hit it. Ding. The sound echoed through the building. Nothing. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Emily grabbed my hand. "Someone's coming." We turned toward the staircase. Slow footsteps descended 1 step at a time, but nobody appeared. The steps continued, closer, closer, until they reached the bottom. then stopped. The lobby went silent. I grabbed Emily. Car. We ran outside. The parking lot was empty. Our car was still there. I unlocked it. Emily threw her bag into the back seat. I started the engine. Nothing. I tried again. The starter clicked. The engine wouldn't turn over. Come on. I tried again. Nothing. The headlights suddenly flickered, then turned off. I looked toward the lodge. Every window on the second floor was dark, except room 12. Its light had turned on. Emily whispered, "Daniel." Someone was standing behind the curtain, a tall silhouette, perfectly still, watching us. I put the car in neutral. Get out. What? Push. We both got out. We pushed the car down the gravel driveway. The lodge stayed behind us. The figure remained at the window. It didn't move, not once. We finally reached the main road. I got back into the driver's seat. The engine started immediately. No hesitation. No problem. I drove. Neither of us spoke for several miles. Then Emily said something that made my stomach drop. "Did you see the woman?" "What woman?" "The receptionist." "What about her?" "She was standing upstairs." I glanced at her. When we were pushing the car, Emily swallowed. She was standing beside the man. I looked back toward the lodge. It was already hidden by the trees. We drove into town. The first place we found was a small diner. It was nearly 3 in the morning. Only one person was inside, an elderly man sitting at the counter. We walked in. The waitress looked at us. "You folks okay?" Emily said. "We need a phone." She pointed toward the wall. I called the sheriff's office. Then we sat down. The old man beside us had been listening. Finally he asked, "You stayed at Pine Hollow?" I nodded. His expression changed. "Room 12?" I nodded again. He slowly put down his coffee. "You need to leave town." I asked why. He stared at me for several seconds, then said, "Because Pine Hollow burnt down in 2011. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain couldn't process what he'd said. "What?" The old man repeated himself. "Fire destroyed the place. Nobody rebuilt it." I pulled out my phone, showed him the reservation, the website, the photographs, everything. He barely looked. "That website isn't real." I felt cold. "Then where did we stay?" He didn't answer. Instead he asked, "Did the woman at the desk give you a brass key?" I slowly reached into my pocket. The key was still there. The old man stared at it, then crossed himself. "That key hasn't been used in 15 years. The sheriff arrived 20 minutes later. I told him everything. He didn't laugh. He didn't call us crazy. He simply asked, "Can you take me there?" We followed his cruiser back toward the mountain. When we reached the gravel road, there was no lodge, no parking lot, no porch. Nothing, just trees. The sheriff stopped his vehicle. I got out. I knew exactly where the building had been, but standing there was an empty patch of forest. Then I saw something, a piece of stone sticking out of the ground, a foundation, burned black. The sheriff walked toward it. "This is what's left." Emily started crying. I couldn't speak. We had slept in a building that hadn't existed for 15 years. The sheriff searched the property. He found no fresh footprints, no tire tracks, no evidence anyone had been living there. But then he found something near the old foundation, a small pile of objects, keys, dozens of them. Some were rusted, some were blackened from fire, others looked almost new. Each one had a wooden room number attached, 4, 7, 9, 12. There were at least 20. The sheriff crouched down. He stared at the key marked 12, then looked at me. "Where did you get yours?" I pointed toward the lodge. He shook his head. "The fire investigation report says room 12 was occupied the night it burned." I asked, "Who was staying there?" He hesitated. "A married couple." "What happened to them?" "They never made it out." We eventually left town. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, we checked into a normal hotel nearly 2 hours away. We told ourselves it was over. We were wrong. At around 8 a.m., I found something inside my jacket pocket. I hadn't put it there. A folded piece of paper. I opened it. 4 words were written in faded black ink. You left too soon. Beneath the sentence was a room number, 12. I threw the paper away. We went home. For months, nothing happened. Eventually, we started feeling normal again. Then, about 6 months later, I received an email. No sender name, no subject, just one photograph. It showed Pine Hollow Lodge, not the burned ruins, the lodge itself, exactly as we'd seen it. The picture had clearly been taken from the parking lot, and there was something strange about it. Our car was visible, parked outside room 12. The timestamp on the photograph was the same night we stayed there, but neither Emily nor I had taken that picture, and whoever had been standing directly outside our window. I never found out who sent the email. The address disappeared immediately afterward. The lodge was demolished completely the following year. At least, that's what the county records say. But every October, around the anniversary of our trip, I receive another photograph. Always the same building, always at night, always room 12. And the photographs keep getting closer. The first showed the lodge from the road. The second showed the parking lot. The third showed our window. The fourth was taken from inside the room. You could see the bed, the fireplace, the curtains, and in the corner of the photograph was Emily, sleeping. The photograph was taken at 12:17 a.m., the exact moment we heard the first 3 knocks. I don't know who took it. I don't know how they got inside, and I don't know why they keep sending me pictures. But last month, I received one more. This time, there was no photograph of the lodge. It was a photograph of my house, taken from across the street. The bedroom window was visible, and underneath the picture, there was a single line. Room 12, IS ready. I haven't slept in that bedroom since. And every night, at exactly 12:17, someone knocks 3 times on the front door. Knock, knock, knock. I never answer, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I still remember what the old woman told us that night. If someone knocks after midnight, don't answer, because sometimes the person knocking isn't trying to get inside. They're checking to see if you're still there.